It's really interesting. I look at the the movement towards private equity, whether it's solo practitioners or small group practices joining private equity. Usually, the people who are the decision makers are towards the tail end of their career. At least that seems to be the case because they usually have the most to gain, right, financially. So they join private equity, maybe they forego salary or they take a large bonus and they work for, let's say, 3-5 years, and then they retire. And for them, I mean, I'm trying to put
Yeah.
myself in their shoes. Hey, that's great. You work so hard for most of your life, put in the hours, the blood, sweat, and the tears, and now here's a really nice, lucrative, and graceful way to exit. And I think it's more the younger doctors either coming straight out of training or who have only been in practice for a few years and maybe they're not partners yet, who feel like they're kind of getting the short end of the stick. You're in a position where you're still really young. You're in the prime of your career. You're not someone I see retiring for like another 20, 30 years. I think even when you're in your 70s,
Yeah.
you're still going to be doing cataract surgery one day a week because you love it so much. You love your craft. And I've seen the move for us to private equity over the past several years pre-pandemic. What has that been like? What motivated those decisions? Because I actually feel like there's been a lot of benefits from that in terms of growth, expansion, and services that can be offered. Being involved in clinical trials, having the latest up-to-date technology, that sort of stuff. I think your perspective is really interesting here because you're not someone who's going to retire in 3 years.
Right. And I think I tell people private equity is a solution for different problems within a practice, let's say. And so a traditional problem for, let's say, an older physician is sort of, what are they going to do when they go to pass that practice on to the next person? Is there a buyer for that? And I think private equity certainly was a solution for that problem. So that's one way of looking at a private equity pathway. But there's other ways private equity can help solve problems. So let's say for my path, the problem was we had grown where we'd started with one downtown location, literally 10 employees, 2 doctors, one, myself and an optometrist, and providing care. And we said, okay, let's grow that to 2 locations and 3. And then we ultimately grew it to, let's say, 10 locations within Northeast Ohio. What had happened is we had this growth path. We said, okay, if we continue on this path, let's continue to expand. We feel like we've got a great model, a great way to do cataract surgery or LASIK. We've got a great team. We want to continue it on this path. But eventually, it's sort of the practice sort of outgrew myself and my partners what our expertise would be. Where we're great doctors, pretty good business people, but when you have one location, if you make a business mistake, you just work a little harder to make that up at the end of the year. When you have, let's say, 200 employees with 10 locations, and if you have some kind of misstep, let's say a billing error or a coding error that's going to hit your margin by 5%, that 5% became too much for any of us to absorb, where it could more or less sink the ship. And so at that point, to continue our path or continue our growth efforts and aspirations, the best avenue for us is to have this solution, and the solution being private equity, to bring in a few things. Number one, bring in expertise as far as running a large business, expertise as far as working with banking and capital, bringing in those resources to help to continue our growth efforts. Simple things, let's say, career paths for our strongest employees. I realize if our growth path, some people might say, well, Wiley, why do you guys still want to grow? You're big enough, you've done enough. Why do you continue wanting to grow? But we looked at sort of being sort of status quo. We saw that some of our best employees were going to move on. They had their aspirations. They wanted to kind of continue their career paths. And with a practice that has a ceiling, your best employees are ultimately going to move on and find work somewhere else. And so by having a continued growth opportunity within the practice provided by a private equity gave opportunities for our best employees to move up. Many of our employees have joined the private equity platform that's now serving a whole region from Illinois to Michigan to Ohio to West Virginia, Pennsylvania. And now we have people that are regional directors managing, let's say, marketing or managing practice integration or working as top level administrators, and these are people that really started on lower level aspects of the practice and moved their way up. So it gives sort of a trajectory for your employees, trajectory for your providers, allows more or less the docs to do what they do best, and allows me to continue being in the OR as much as I can. And it doesn't mean that I've totally pulled out of the business seat. It allows me to kind of pitch ideas in a boardroom, or pitch ideas to administrators, and allow true experts in what they do to excel the practice. So I think that private equity can definitely be a solution for growth, and it doesn't have to be the only solution for growth. There's many of practices that are out there that have the resources to continue their own growth plans. And I tell them, hey, if you're making it go by yourself, continue. But if you're struggling or stressing, or you don't want to take that second mortgage on your house to buy that next clinic, there are resources out there that can provide that and take the stress off. So I see it as a good solution for our field, and I think it's going to continue based on what I'm seeing now.